ready to begin when you are.
Thank you, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. The meeting of the board is a hybrid physical virtual meeting. I'd like to welcome those in the boardroom with me today and those who are joining virtually. While keeping your microphone muted, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. At this time, I will ask the Secretary to the Board to address a few technical and protocol items.
We have a quorum. The full board is present for this meeting. Chairman Hall and Board Member Smith. Please ensure that you have silenced any mobile devices you have with you. The virtual portion of this hybrid meeting is on Cisco WebEx. We have two OIT staff, Ben Rana and Victor Amaya, monitoring and managing the meeting. They will be locking this meeting and no new connections will be allowed. OIT will be advancing the slides, so you will hear presenters say, "Next slide." If you lose connectivity in this meeting, please contact Victor Amaya. Lastly, this meeting is being recorded. The video recording of the open portion of this meeting will be posted for public viewing for a limited period of time. Chairman Hall, that concludes the technical and protocol items. We're ready to continue when you are.
Secretary will now read an opening statement on the Government in the Sunshine Act.
This is an open Farm Credit Administration Board meeting under the Government in the Sunshine Act. If anyone raises a subject that may be discussed in closed session as permitted by the Government in the Sunshine Act, Chairman Hall will entertain a motion to close the meeting.
We will now review the published meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as published?
There is. Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the agenda as published.
Second the motion. The motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the matter? If not, the Secretary will record the vote on the motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we will consider whether any portions of the meeting should be closed to the public.
The agenda does not include items that we should properly discuss in closed session. I move that the entire meeting remain open.
Second the motion. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, the Secretary will record the vote on this motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries. Will, let's turn to tab 1. At this time, I will ask Rebecca Kaiser to present the annual report on the Farm Credit System YBS Farmers and Ranchers Mission Performance. This is an information item.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here this morning to talk about YBS, one of my favorite topics. I'm here to give the annual report, the update on the Farm Credit System's YBS mission performance. Next slide, please. I want to start off this presentation by making one big point and emphasizing that we had a really quiet year with YBS on the FCA side for data collection, and that's a great thing. I think it means that all of our hard work in the past couple of years have really started to pay those dividends. Last year we had the small definition that changed, that caused, or didn't cause issues, but it was a change. And then 2 years before that was when we implemented this new modern process. So again, this is the third year of reporting both data sets in this manner, the third year of the new process, and then now the second year of the small definition. We didn't have any of those changes, so it was smooth going this year. The emphasis also on the hard work that we've put in the past is all to make this nice, reliable, robust time series of data for YBS. And we're working towards that, and we've got a great start to it. With that, we've put in the work to conceptualize and implement these changes, in the past years. And now we're transitioning into the time period where we're going to be able to better apply this data in our mission as FCA, as well as being able to examine and monitor the YBS performance of the system. One of the things that we did this year that was a little bit different was we were more proactive. We held a webinar back in January for the lending data that gave a great opportunity for the system to attend, ask questions, share best practices before the reporting deadline came. We had great attendance with the system, and I think it was really a success. We also had questions that came in before the reporting deadline that made sure that we were able to straighten out anything pretty much before that we had questions afterwards. With this, our rigorous quality assurance processes were continued to be followed because of all the hard work I said that we put in years past. This was actually the first year that we didn't have any resubmissions on the lending data front. I think the automation on our end, as well as on the systems end, really has paid off and has made it easier for submission, as well as that quality assurance process. Next slide, please. To start off, I'm going to talk about the non-lending report. The non-lending report is an online survey that we host and send out to the institutions early in the year, in February to April. And it includes questions on how much money the institutions spend on a couple different areas. Those are listed on the slide there. There's 6 groups there. Non-lending capital commitments, which include investments and leases. Financially related services, those are things such as like tax prep fees that have been paid or doc prep fees, also guarantee fees that have been paid. Then education we collect in a couple different ways. That's scholarships, conferences, seminars, workshops, and grants. And then also marketing and outreach. Not shown on the screen, but we also collect information on program characteristics for YBS programs. And this gives us a better insight into how institutions are administering and monitoring internally their YBS programs. So that includes questions on whether they have a YBS board member, a YBS advisory committee, if they met their goals for the year, if they offer any special interest rate concessions, and things like that. Next slide, please. In 2025, the system provided $396.4 million in services to YBS producers. The majority of that, or about 88%, $350 million, was from investments and leases. $36.7 million was on scholarships, grants, other educational services, as well as marketing and outreach. And about $10 million was financially related services. Also, those program characteristics I was talking about earlier, 63% of institutions said that they had a YBS advisory committee. 86% said they had dedicated staff for YBS. And then 93%, which is very close to 100%, said that they do provide specific program training on YBS for their staff. We also saw 58% of institutions had YBS board members. And then 61% said that they offer some kind of special interest rate concessions or special pricing for YBS as well. Next slide, please. So if we take out the bulk of that $396 million that are contained within that non-lending capital commitments, which are investments and leases, we're left over with $46 million provided in services. And that gives us a little bit more of a balanced picture here. You can see in the pie chart on the right. The largest group out of this was education and grants, which was about 38%, and financially related services, which was 21%. Now, out of that education and grants, the largest question, or the largest group, I guess, was grants to youth organizations. And these are grants to programs such as 4-H, FFA, and I know those are very, very important to getting started as, young beginning small farmers. That's particularly how I got involved in farming and was able to grow my operation. The associations had mentioned that they do give this money to youth organizations to be able to expand spaces, reduce barriers to entry for these kids, make it safer for volunteers as well to participate in those activities. Next slide, please. So this is the year-over-year change from 2024 to 2025 in non-lending dollars spent. On the far left-hand side, you can see that's the 2024 total of about $348 million. And then on the far right, we have the 2025 total, which is about $396 million. The total difference between 2024 and 2025 was $48 million. You can see most of that came from an increase in non-lending capital commitments, which is the big blue bar on the left. That accounted for about 44 of the $48 million increase. Other notable changes was in scholarships. That was an increase of $1.7 million, and almost all of that $1.7 million was an increase to scholarships to universities and colleges. Financially related services also increased. A big chunk of that increase was from increases in guarantee fee payments, which almost more than doubled from 2024. We also see a decrease in marketing and outreach, which was the only group to decrease from 2024 to 2025. And that specifically came from a couple of different categories, but one of it was because there was such a large investment in a couple of the districts on their education development in 2024, that now that those education models are being maintained, the money is not being spent to I guess, put new money into it. It's just being maintained now. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's showing success that program is working too. On the side of program characteristics, it's not shown on the graph, but we had 4 more institutions that had a YBS advisory committee, one less institution that had a YBS board member, 5 more institutions that reported having dedicated staff, which 5 out of 59 is pretty close to 10%. It's a large increase there. And 2 more indicated that they offer interest rate concessions to YBS. Next slide, please. Switching over from non-lending to lending, kind of giving a recap of the lending data collection framework. So what we do with this is we leverage the existing data systems within the system, the agreed upon data dictionary between the system and FCA. And we collect the data in 8 groups, 7 mutually exclusive YBS groups and 1 non-YBS group. With this, it's designed to be automated. That's what I was kind of talking about earlier in the presentation, that the hard work we put in earlier, get everything automated, has made it so much easier for both me and for the system. This also means that those initial startup costs are making it easier in the long term to report this data. And we're also currently working on a system to make it easier for the banks to submit their lending data, which will improve the consistency of the data and efficiency of the QA checks in the future too. All in all, our lending data collection framework really gets at the heart of the question, which is looking at how many dollars are in the hands of farmers, specifically YBS farmers. Next slide, please. So this table shows new lending or loans made in 2025 to the system. This again is a subset of loans made during 2025. So to be eligible for YBS reporting, we have a specific subset of record and loan types. And this is reported in current commitment, which is the total of undisbursed commitment and principal balance. So it gets really at the heart of looking at the total commitment of dollars to farmers. In 2025, the system made about 310 or 311,000 loans for about $150 million. Of this, 175,000 loans went to a YBS farmer for about $38 billion. That represents about 56% of loan counts going to YBS, and a little bit less, about 25%, 25.5% on the volume side going to YBS. Next slide, please. So this graph takes the YBS categories that we saw on the table on the previous slide and puts them into comparison against each other. In this, we can see that the small only category is the largest category, which is similar to what we've seen in past years. Small only category accounts for about 42% of YBS loan counts and closer to 25% of YBS volume. The beginning and small category is the next largest category, and then the young and small category is the smallest, which has been historically what we've seen as well in the data. Next slide, please. Moving on from new to outstanding loans, these are all the outstanding loans on the books as of December 31st, 2025. At that point, the system had about 1.1 million loans for about $430 billion. Again, this is a subset of total lending activity, and YBS loans totaled about 696,000 for $131 billion. Similar to with the new loans, the YBS had a larger share of loan counts, and that was about 62%. And on the volume side, non-YBS has the bulk of the volume there. YBS volume accounted for about 30.6% of the total loan volume. Next slide, please. So similarly, this shows the same thing, just with outstanding loans. Small only on the side of counts was the largest group. And small only for volume, this is the first year that we've seen it hasn't been the smallest or hasn't been the largest category in terms of volume. And that actually went to beginning and small. Beginning and small just kind of outpaced it this year. So we see beginning and small also a very large category, coming in second for the loan counts this year. And similarly, we see young and small as the smallest category for outstanding loans. Next slide, please. If we look year over year from 2024 to 2025, we did see that loan counts did increase between 2024 and 2025, especially in the new category, where it grew 19.7%. A lot of this had to do with the way a couple of institutions started counting their pooled loans. And I think this is a great example of the new lending data framework working. We were able to see this and be able to pinpoint down exactly how much of this change was from the method counting or the change in the method of counting. This is just one way that we're getting better and better data every year. And everything is, it's not one and done, we're still improving. On the volume side, we saw loan volume also increase 14.5% for new loans, as well as 7% for outstanding. And then if we look at the share of loan counts to YBS categories, the share of all new lending to YBS loans was down in 2025 compared to 2024. However, the total share of outstanding loans at the year-end 2025 increased by about 1 percentage point. So essentially what this means is that compared to 2024, 2025 YBS lending, the share of it was down slightly. However, more YBS loans pretty much stayed on the books. They didn't roll off the books as quickly as non-YBS loans were. So the share of loans in the total portfolio that are YBS was increased. One of the other things we're also seeing is, if you think back to the graph that I just showed with the bar chart, how it's distributed between different YBS categories. One thing that we have seen is there's a slight shift in loan volume and counts that are going to other categories outside of small only, which is something that is somewhat new. And I think it's great that we're seeing more lending to other groups outside of that largest category. Next slide, please. So to wrap things up and talk a little bit about what I've talked about in terms of counts and volume, as well as seeing what we're able to see from the new process. It's a very exciting time, I'd say. And we see that more loan counts are going to YBS, whereas more volume goes to non-YBS. And with this additive, mutually exclusive framework, we're able to continually improve the data and get to what the heart of the matter is, and seeing those changes almost in real time, rather than kind of noticing something's going wrong or something's different, and then having to track it down. So it saves us a lot of time and effort. We're also kind of have married up the non-lending data with the lending data, and that's giving us some really good insights into YBS programs, what makes up the heart of a YBS program, as well as what are the outcomes with YBS lending. All in all, we've put in a lot of hard work in the past couple of years. We're in this transition period where we're really now going to be seeing the fruits of that labor, where we can apply this data to better be able to see how the system is serving its YBS mission. With that, I will conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rebecca. Question or comments, Board Member Smith?
Sure, with pleasure. First of all, Rebecca, how was the calf crop out on the eastern slope of Colorado with your family's operation?
It's been great this year.
Has it?
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Good. Well, keep up with the good. For those that love their beefsteak, keep up the good work. We need more beef in the pipeline. We're on the third year of data now, and I know from the start we said that this will only get better every year, and I think the numbers show that. It has gotten better. And I think the other thing we emphasized from the start, this is a tremendous tool in linking best practices to actual performance. Have you seen anything as of yet of best practices that kind of rise to the top as having a performance? Kind of a common theme, I guess, what I'm looking for.
So we are working on some of that research with linking the best practices within the non-lending to the lending and being able to do some actual statistical analyses with that to get at the heart of what is making those the lending results. You know, what affects it the best or the most. Off the top of my head right now, I'm not sure. I mean, because we're only a couple years in, it's hard to tell. But we're definitely working on that. And I know there's going to be a lot of things that might surprise us, might surprise some people. But it's one of the things that we're looking at. I think it's a great thing that now with this new data system, we're able to really look at.
And it should only get better and more accurate.
Correct.
Every year. I think it's great to see Ann Thompson here from the council. Welcome, Ann. And I think this is the message that it would be good for your institutions to know this is a tremendous tool for your boards to get a correlation between those best practices, the ROI on the resources spent on those best practices, and what ends up in performance. And I guess while I'm on that theme and mention your name, Ann, obviously we've got a final rule. It's been over 2 years now, and that ensures that the emphasis on this program succeeds this board. And that's good to see, because it's good for everybody in agriculture, in my humble opinion. But I'd like to certainly encourage continued collaboration with the council, with the institutions. Whatever I can do in my new role, I'm happy to help. But this is a great success story, and so it's good to see it on the good track. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you're welcome. A lot of credit goes to you and your work over the years, so thank you for that. Back a couple of maybe not one question. That $396 million in non-lending support, I mean, that's a huge number, but I have to think that may be even underestimated a little bit from other things that are not reported or other things going on. I mean, Chairman, we talked about the Farm Credit Council and their involvement. Is that captured too as some of the activities they do in support of young farm YBS programs?
That's a great question. The $396 million is a lot, and it's great to see. The bulk of that is in leases, but there's still, about $50 million that is actively spent in recruiting and educating new farmers. Whereas I'm not sure if the council's numbers, we don't, send
Right.
anything out to the council, but it may be captured through other activities that the system institutions do participate in.
Right.
There are things that they might not be captured in there as well, if they're not specifically fit into one of our categories. We try to read through all of the information submissions to make sure that even if an institution didn't have something that fit into one of our categories, that we're still, being mindful of it and capturing it and recognizing it somehow.
Because it is survey data, so I mean, it just you collect it based on what they report.
Yes.
And then just on the hard numbers, the lending data. I mean, I know a lot of work's gone into it over the years, and I just think the end result is a much better product. I mean, it's going to give us more concrete numbers going forward on how to measure these things, and slicing and dicing it in a different way is something should have been done years ago. And I'm glad we finally got there, and it's a lot of hard work. So appreciate all the work that went to getting that done.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And thank you for your work on it too. Your enthusiasm shows, and we appreciate that. It's an exciting program, and I think we all understand just the foundation of what that means for the future of agriculture, and making sure we support young beginning and small farmers is just foundational to keeping agriculture strong. Thank you, Rebecca. For no further questions, I'll ask you to turn to tab 2, and at this time I'll ask Jennifer Booker to present the Office of Secondary Market Oversight periodic report, and this will be an information item.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Chairman Hall, Board Member Smith. My name is Jennifer Booker. I'm a credit risk specialist with the Office of Examination. I'm doing a rotational assignment with Osmo, and I'm here to deliver the periodic report. Next slide. Our agenda today, we're going to talk about why Farmer Mac was created, how its authorities and portfolio have evolved over the last 4 decades. It will be a highlight reel, not a play-by-play, for those of you who want to know. How FCA's oversight evolved with it, where the risk profile stands today, including looking at delinquency trends, classified asset trends, and charge-offs historically, and where Farmer Mac sees itself looking ahead. Next slide, please. So when Farmer Mac was created, picture this, interest rates were skyrocketing, land values were plummeting, commodity prices were tanking, credit markets were seizing up, and that is the world that Farmer Mac was born into. Congress stepped in with a broad rescue package. Some of you in this room were there for this. The Agricultural Credit Act of 1987. Farmer Mac was created as a new secondary market for agricultural real estate loans, and operations began in 1988. The mission remains central to Farmer Mac today. Farmer Mac was built to stabilize rural credit. As Farmer Mac's authorities grew, Congress also decided it needed its own distinct supervisory structure. Next slide, please. That supervisory structure was Osmo. Farmer Mac is unlike the rest of the farm credit. They're publicly traded. They're a secondary market. They report to both the SEC and FCA, and their board of directors include 5 presidential nominees. Congress recognized these differences. So in 1990, Congress expanded FCA's authority to examine and supervise Farmer Mac. And in 91, Congress directed this FCA board to establish the Office of Secondary Market Oversight. And in 92, Osmo was up and running. Today, Osmo provides continuous examination and regulation and supervision of Farmer Mac, including both safety and soundness and mission oversight. The timeline on the next slide illustrates some highlights of Farmer Mac's evolution since 1988. Next slide. There are several milestones worth noting here. Initially, Farmer Mac had a relatively narrow secondary market mandate from Congress. In 1990, Congress expanded the charter to include USDA guaranteed securities. In 96, Farmer Mac gained authority to purchase loans directly. In 97, assets reached $1 billion. In 99, they became publicly traded. And by 2011, assets exceeded $10 billion. By year in 25, outstanding business volume exceeded $33 billion. So this timeline shows more than just simple growth. It shows a series of congressional and strategic changes that progressively broaden Farmer Mac's mission in rural credit markets. So when you translate these milestones into financial terms, the scale of that evolution becomes more apparent. Next slide. This slide really puts the magnitude of Farmer Mac's growth into perspective. In 1988, Farmer Mac had approximately $500 million in outstanding business volume, which is the box on the far left. That grew to $33.4 billion. As you can also see, the middle 2 boxes, total assets and core capital, also grew, and net income increased from approximately $2 million to $222 million over that time frame. Farmer Mac today is not simply an expanded version of the original institution. Its financial significance for rural agricultural credit markets and the amount of risk it manages have substantially increased. But perhaps the more interesting change is what makes up the $33 billion in business volume. That brings us to the evolution of the portfolio itself. Next slide. This slide illustrates the evolution of the business segments. The first illustration on the slide shows that in 1988, 100% of Farmer Mac's volume was concentrated in one market segment, which was agricultural real estate. If you follow the arrow over to the pie chart, which depicts today, you'll see farm and ranch remains the largest segment at almost 58.7%. Corporate ag finance adds another 7%. That's the orange pie slice there. And both of those together make up agricultural finance. But Farmer Mac now also has a significant infrastructure finance business encompassing the power and utilities, the renewable energy, and the broadband infrastructure. That diversification provides additional sources of mission-related growth, but it also introduces different types of borrowers, collateral, underwriting structures, and risk. That distinction becomes increasingly important when we get to the supervisory portion of this presentation. But before we do that, it is useful to understand how Farmer Mac actually participates in these markets by looking at some of their products and their solutions. Next slide. Farmer Mac's secondary market role takes on several different forms here, and I've outlined 4 different products and solutions. The most straightforward product is the loan purchases. Farmer Mac purchases eligible loans from lenders, providing those lenders with liquidity and reducing some of their credit and interest rate exposure. Within the farm credit system, Farmer Mac purchased loans from 3 different banks and 30 different associations. Another product is their wholesale financing, which includes the Ag Vantage structures. In those transactions, Farmer Mac essentially provides the funding to another institution who is the primary obligor. It's secured by a pool of eligible loans, so Farmer Mac's first layer of credit exposure is to that counterparty, not directly to each borrower in the pledged pool. Another one that I'd like to highlight here is the long-term standby purchase commitments. Farmer Mac provides credit protection here, while the originating lender retains the loan and the relationship at that level. Farmer Mac steps in only when the loan becomes 90 days past due. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the securitizations. That's where Farmer Mac guarantees securities backed by eligible ag loans that have been put into a trust. Farmer Mac guarantees puts the credit risk much more directly behind the credit performance, meaning the cash flow and of the underlying pool. So Farmer Mac's role is broader than simply purchasing individual loans. It provides a range of liquidity, funding, credit risk solutions to ag and rural lending institutions. So let's move from the historical evolution to where Farmer Mac stands today. Next slide. Recently published second quarter highlights are illustrated on this slide. As of the second quarter 2026, Farmer Mac continued to report growth across all of its portfolio. Agricultural finance represents 65% of outstanding business volume. That encompasses the farm and ranch and corporate ag finance. Infrastructure finance makes up 35%, and those are the other 3 business segments there. Farm and ranch remains the largest individual segment at $22 billion. It grew 21% year over year. But some of the highest percentage growth is occurring in the newer infrastructure segments. Renewable energy grew 55% year over year, primarily due to construction activity tied to regulatory incentives that were in the form of tax credits. Broadband infrastructure grew 58%, and broadband is still Farmer Mac's smallest segment at approximately $1.9 billion, but it is currently the fastest growing segment. A significant portion of the recent broadband growth is from loans for data centers. 70% of new volume was related to this demand. Farmer Mac advances their mission by financing long-term investments that underpin rural communities. The continued growth in these segments reflects sustained demand for capital supporting broadband expansion, renewable energy development, and modernization of rural power and rural telecommunications. So we have both scale and changing portfolio composition occurring at the same time. And that combination of growth, diversification, and increasing complexity is relevant from FCA's perspective, which brings us to FCA's supervisory considerations. Next slide. Congress was explicit about what it wanted us to do. FCA, acting through OSMO, is charged with the examination of Farmer Mac and the general supervision of the safe and sound performance of its powers, functions, and duties. This language drives everything we do. As Farmer Mac has become larger and more complex, FCA's supervisory approach has evolved accordingly. The areas illustrated here on the slide are not independent silos. They are interconnected elements of Farmer Mac's overall risk profile. For example, sustainable growth requires adequate capital. New products and counterparties place greater demands on enterprise risk management. Increasing reliance on technology elevates operational and cybersecurity considerations. And through their growth and diversification, Farmer Mac must continue fulfilling the public mission Congress established. Our objective is to ensure that Farmer Mac's governance, risk management, and financial capacity keep pace with their growth. That is at the heart of risk-based supervision. So within that broader supervisory framework, credit risk management remains one of the areas where the challenging changes in the portfolio are especially visible. Next slide. Farmer Mac's portfolio now contains exposure with different risk characteristics. Within agricultural finance, underwriting remains grounded in borrower repayment capacity, collateral value, with analysis of water rights with that and how it affects land values, commodity-specific risk. Corporate ag finance, however, often involves larger, more complex borrowers, providing diversification across commodities and geographies, but requiring more in-depth analysis. Infrastructure finance introduces yet another set of considerations. Power and utilities, broadband, and renewable energy can involve project finance construction, enterprise valuations, and contractual cash flows that differ substantially from traditional agricultural real estate lending. So as Farmer Mac's portfolio has diversified, the credit risk analysis required to understand it has also become more specialized. Now let's discuss AgVantage, which provides an example of a different type of credit exposure within Farmer Mac's business model. Next slide. At year-end, Farmer Mac had approximately $8.4 billion of AgVantage securities outstanding. Those transactions are supported by pools of eligible loans, as we discussed, generally collateralized. The collateralization requirements are 100% to 125%, and that's measured against the outstanding principal amount of the loan. The underlying loans have a separate property level loan to value, which is different from the loan balance coverage of 100% to 125%. There is another layer beneath the loan balance, the collateral securing each individual ag loan. Farmer Mac reports that it has experienced no credit losses in the AgVantage sector of the program, which dates back to 1999. But given the size of the portfolio at $8.4 billion, OSMO's analysis considers not only the underlying collateral, but also the financial condition and creditworthiness of the issuing institutions and the potential concentration associated with the individual counterparties. So let's turn next and look at trends in the underlying credit portfolio. Next slide. This chart shows a 5-year history of 90-day delinquencies in agricultural finance mortgage loans. And I did not include infrastructure finance loans because there have not been any 90-day delinquencies in the periods shown on the chart. Delinquencies declined from 2021 to 2023, as you can see, reaching approximately 35 million at year-end 2023. Delinquencies increased in 2024 and then rose further in 2025. The increase has been concentrated primarily in permanent plantings and crops, with significant geographic concentration in the Southwest. Approximately half of the delinquent balance is associated with the 10 largest borrower exposures, which warrants close monitoring, but it is a different risk profile than seeing delinquencies emerge broadly across borrowers, geographies, and commodity sectors. Farmer Mac continues to report that those delinquent loans remain adequately collateralized. Delinquency trends are one credit quality indicator, but now let's look at another view of credit migration by looking at criticized assets. Next slide. This chart shows a clear change in trajectory beginning in 2024. As you see on the screen, Farmer Mac's special mention balance, which is depicted by the yellow line, and substandard balance, which is the red line, increased beginning in 2024 and continued upward in 2025. The principal areas of pressure have been permanent plantings and crops. But historical content is important here. Agricultural finance substandard assets were approximately 3.5% at year-end 2025 compared to the 15-year historical norm of no more than 4%. So the direction of movement is something we monitor, but the absolute level remains within Farmer Mac's longer-term historical experiences. What matters is looking beneath the aggregate number to commodity, geography, borrower concentration, and individual business segments to understand where risk is migrating. So criticized assets and delinquencies don't necessarily translate directly into realized losses or charge-offs. The next chart puts Farmer Mac's actual charge-off experience into a much longer historical context. Next slide. This is Farmer Mac's own chart. It compares its historical charge-off experience with both the Farm Credit System, which is the red line, and commercial bank agricultural lending, which is the blue line. Farmer Mac is the green line at the bottom. The long-term picture is notable. Over the period shown, Farmer Mac reports an average charge-off rate of approximately 2 basis points. Even during periods of significant ag stress, Farmer Mac's realized losses historically remained comparatively low. They did move in tandem with the banks and the Farm Credit System. For example, if you look at 2009, you'll see Farmer Mac's that increase in their charge-off rate there coincides with the increase of the others. That was ethanol-related deals there that they had an increase in their charge-offs on. And I think that's more of a reflection of their collateral protection and their low loan to values. But if you look at the right-hand side of the graph, please, you'll see Farmer Mac and the other institutions shown here, but Farmer Mac in particular, the green line has a trajectory of going up. So the next slide pulls out those last couple of years and shows what's behind the recent increase. Next slide. So 2023, there were no charge-offs. 2024, that increase was due to one borrower. It was a $4.5 million charge off, and it was a permanent planting borrower. 2025, the charge off was 20.9 million. Losses were concentrated in a few large loans in corporate ag finance and broadband infrastructure. And at the first quarter of 26, that's my blue box there, Farmer Mac reported 2.2 million of charge-offs in corporate ag finance driven by crops and a large ag storage and processing facility. Farmer Mac's realized losses remain low relative to the size of the portfolio and its long-term history. But at the same time, the recent experience demonstrates that as Farmer Mac expands into different types of lending and more complex credit, the sources of potential charge-offs are becoming more diverse as well. That is something Osmo will continue to evaluate as part of our risk-based supervisory approach. And that brings us to the final part of the presentation. Next slide, please. Several years ago, Farmer Mac established what it calls its 40 by 40 vision, which is 40 billion in outstanding business volume by its 40th anniversary in 2028. At year-end 2025, Farmer Mac had already reached approximately 33.4 billion, and management now expects to surpass the 40 billion threshold ahead of that original target. So from FCA's perspective, the significance is not simply the size of that number. It is that Farmer Mac is becoming larger while also becoming more diversified and more complex. That means capital levels, governance, risk management, operational capacity, underwriting expertise, and mission compliance all have to keep pace. Over nearly 4 decades, Farmer Mac has grown and evolved, but its fundamental mission has remained constant, supporting agricultural and rural America. As Farmer Mac enters its next phase, Osmo's role is to ensure that growth is governed, risk is recognized, and mission remains meaningful. So that is where Farmer Mac has been, where it is today, and where it will guide our oversight going forward. Next slide. This concludes the presentation, and at this time, I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Questions or comments?
I sure do. Jennifer, again, apologize I didn't get a briefing before with you. I had a couple of things on my agenda.
Yes, you did.
This week. But great, excellent presentation. I particularly like the date line on Farmer Mac. I was deeply involved in the industry in that 38, 39 years ago when it involved. If you were as well. Remember, there was a picture in one of the historical FCA books in Ronald Reagan's office. There was one of my ag law professors, Neil Harrell. There was the governor of Iowa, who looked like he just graduated from high school, Terry Branstad, and John Block, Secretary of Ag. And that was either 87 or 88, and they're trying to figure out what the heck to do with this mess we're in at that point. Mm-hmm. And Farmer Mac was one of those solutions to offer an alternative to farmers. And we've always talked, the more alternatives farmers have to safe and secure credit, the better for the ag industry. So that date line brings back a lot of memories. I would caution you. I know one of the big hiccup time frames for Farmer Mac was in the ethanol boom, and people want to get on the wagon. They want to ride that bubble and ride that bubble to profitability. One thing I've always said is never lose the reason for Farmer Mac, and that's farm and ranch, and make sure that emphasis of farm and ranch continues strong. Do you have any idea we're at 58.7% of the portfolio today? How does that compare to the previous 2 years?
I don't have that information off the top of my head. It hasn't changed much year over year, but I don't know the history, whether or not that's shrinking, and that would be the concern uh, that you're suggesting.
Yeah, I would urge Osmo to look at that. I know we've heard in previous presentations about their stepped up marketing efforts. And so my guess is it stayed the same, maybe increased a little bit, but something, again, don't lose track of the original mission going back to 87, 88 at that time frame. And along the lines of the cautionary note, the biggest growth area, renewable energy, 55%, tremendous growth. But at the same time, there's a huge de-emphasis in solar and wind right now. And de-emphasis means potential of losing those tax credits, which is instrumental in that industry right now. Any idea what percentage is in wind and solar? And again, I apologize. I weren't able to get you these questions in advance, but is that anything you're aware of?
The renewable energy, a large portion of it is wind and solar. And I know that from our loan reviews. We've reviewed several of them. Those tax credits, if they don't have the construction up and running now, they expire at the end of next year. So that growth was driven by those tax credits. So with them expiring, Farmer Mac stated that they may see that increase decline, that they will not see a push in that as much, but they are not going to lose their emphasis on it. If the demand is there, they will meet that demand. But they don't, with the tax credits going away, it's questionable what the demand is going to look like.
Yeah, the industry will dictate their participation on where that's going. And again, a cautionary note, the highest growth was in the broadband infrastructure. Broadband is great, but you're starting to read a little bit about the proliferation of data centers. And number one, sometimes the tax it might have on local areas, but also the question, technology is moving so fast. 2 or 3 years from now, will we have data centers in space that make the ones here obsolete? But again, a cautionary note on riding those bubbles, because if you do look at the past in Farmer Mac, I understand diversification, respect diversification, but I think Osmo needs to have a watchful eye on those high growth
Very good point.
areas.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Great presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Just another point on the history line. Back in the 90s, early 90s, there were conversations where Farmer Mac was going to succeed or survive. And a lot of those changes, the patience and some of those changes that were made in the early 90s have really proven beneficial. And now Farmer Mac's an important part of the credit profile in rural America. And I think it's due to their success, but also our oversight and working with them over the years. So it's an important part of the history lesson too. Jennifer, thanks for your presentation. Good job.
Thank you. This was actually a very fun presentation to create. So thank you for allowing me to present it.
Well, maybe one day when there's a bunch of new board members, this will be a place to start with Farmer Mac, giving them that history lesson.
I'd be happy to do it again.
Keep that in the archives.
There you go.
Well, for no further questions, thank you for your presentation. Before we go to the adjournment tab, I want to take a moment to acknowledge Board Member Smith, who will be leaving FCA at some point. He doesn't know. Maybe he got a phone call while we're sitting here. I don't know.
I didn't bring my phone in, so I don't know.
All right. Well, soon he'll accept the role as the Undersecretary for Rural Development at FCA. Glenn was appointed to the FCA board in December of 2017. In the years since, he has served with remarkable dedication as both a board member and chairman and chief executive officer from July of 2019 to October of 2022. After graduating from Iowa State University during one of the more challenging times in agriculture, Glenn went on to co-found Smith Land Services, a successful business dedicated to farm management, land appraisal, and farmland brokerage service. He also owns and serves as president of Smith Generation Farms, a 2,000-acre crop and livestock family operation in western Iowa. Shortly after he joined the Farm Credit Administration, he established several key priorities, which include the Farm Credit System's YBS Farmer Program, which we were glad he was here to hear our annual report today. and it's a cause he's devoted particular energy to. His advocacy and efforts helped to elevate the program's importance, facilitated the sharing of best practices, and changed how the agency examines the effectiveness of each institution's initiatives. He has been an effective voice, lending support and encouragement for strong capital and sound lending practices. He never shied away from difficult conversations on the structure of the system, and we could always depend on him to provide a thoughtful perspective on how interest rates, production cost, and market volatility truly affect producers on the ground. It is with deepest respect and appreciation that I thank Glenn for his partnership that we've shared over these past 8 years, and extend my very best wishes as he steps into this newly confirmed role of Undersecretary for Rural Development at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I also want to recognize Fozanne and the entire family for their steadfast commitment and support throughout Glenn's service at FCA. Thank you, Glenn.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll reserve my extended few comments for later on today with cake, right? But I'll miss this boardroom. It really is a special place, and all the discussions we've had, everything that goes along with it. You know, a lot of the conversations come to a culmination here in this boardroom. I think we both have agreed from the start, a strong regulator is good for the system. It's good for rural America, and embracing that has certainly been our guiding light the whole time here. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you. There are no further business to bring before the board. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second the motion. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, the secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Hall.
Aye. Motion carries, and this meeting is adjourned.